This is Real Housewives of the Kingdom, a sweet space where you'll hear from the hearts of fellow housewives in the kingdom of God, some just like you and some really different in various walks of life. We will talk about how God is walking with us through the good and the hard. I pray you'll be encouraged and entertained as we laugh and sometimes cry together. Most of all, I hope it reminds you we're in this together and you are not alone. Hey everybody, welcome back to Real Housewives of the Kingdom. I'm Caroline and I am your host. And today it's just me, and I am doing the third installment of my series on hospitality and hostessing. If you didn't go back and listen to my previous two episodes, I talked about intentionality behind hostessing and hospitality, and I also talked about atmosphere. So you can go back and listen to those. I will link them in the show notes. Today, I want to focus on sustenance and activities. And I'm going to start with activities. Why do you think it's called entertaining? I mean, really, we are providing entertainment for somebody in our home. So even if we're not putting on a show, to some respect, we are in charge of keeping them occupied for the evening, and hopefully in a way that makes them feel loved and welcomed, and that is just fulfilling and lovely. No matter if it's a big party or just a sweet night with your hubby, it can be a great idea to think ahead and plan some activities. Sometimes, you have your best friend over, or your best friends, couple friends, whatever it may be, and you may know exactly what you're going to do with them, or exactly the thing that they love to do, so it doesn't take a lot of thought and planning. But sometimes you have somebody new coming over, and in that case, it's definitely a good idea to have something at least planned, especially if you don't know the person very well and you don't know how conversation's going to flow, or maybe you're going to have a large group of people and you're not sure how the conversation's going to flow. It's kind of nice to have something that can break the ice and keep things moving. And it can help your guests have less anxiety about being somewhere. Because I know, even though I'm very outgoing, I don't know if you noticed, and I don't have a problem with being in a party situation, meeting new people, talking to new people. I have no problem with that. But I know a lot of people who do. And so if you can think ahead and have things kind of prepared, it can kind of calm your guests' anxieties, and ultimately that makes them feel welcome. One of the things that I like to do that I find pretty easy with our current day and age is I do picture slideshows. So if it's somebody that you know, and you have photos with them, you can do it on your Fire Stick. You can do it with Apple TV. It's so easy these days to create a little slideshow and have it running on your TV. And this will make your guests feel welcome. Say you went on a vacation with them, or say you knew them in preschool and you have a bunch of photos of you together. Having that playing on a TV or somewhere in your home, just kind of in the background, can really make somebody feel like you thought about them. And it can also bring up good conversation, memories, that sort of a thing. So it's always a good idea. Music, of course, is partially entertainment, and we've discussed music and atmosphere because it creates atmosphere, but music is also entertainment. Games. Now, games are tricky because I love playing games, but we do have friends that don't love playing games. So you don't feel offended if somebody doesn't want to play a game, but it can be a great thing, an activity to do. We have other friends that we love to play certain games with. We play games with friends who have kids because often that's a great way for the kids and the adults to all hang out and do something together. And so that is a great tip. Also, if you don't know the person very well, maybe ask them to bring a game. Bring your favorite game. And if you do that, you'll kind of start to get to know who they are, or their favorite movie. You'll kind of start to get to know who they are. by what they brought, and it makes them feel like they're sharing a bit of themselves. And that being said, too, I already just said about games with kids activities, but you can have other kid activities too. And in the episode where I talked about intentionality with your guests and even thinking about your littlest guests, this is just touching back on that again. We have crayons, coloring books that we just keep at our house. We are aunt and uncle. We've got lots of kiddos that run around. We are godparents. We have kids at our house, and we always want to make sure that they feel like there's something that they can do, especially if the adults get in a conversation that's kind of boring for the kids. You don't want them sitting there and, feeling like they're so bored, because then in turn, their parents will then feel uncomfortable and maybe not feel like they could stay as long. So it's really thinking about both guests by having both kids and adults by having activities for the kids that are coming to your house. Another great thing that you can do, say you live in a really small house, or you don't have a way to have many activities, maybe you don't even have a dining room table. You can take a walk after dinner. Maybe you have a park nearby, and that's a great one for kids too. If you don't have a great place for kids to play and maybe get out their wiggles, you can have dinner and then everyone take a walk to the park, and kids can play and get out their energy, and then you can walk back to your house and have dessert. So that is another great option in terms of activities. We have a fire pit, which not everybody can have a fire pit at their house, but even roasting marshmallows, which I haven't even got to sustenance yet, but I will talk about desserts. But roasting marshmallows is like an activity and a dessert all wrapped in one. It's kind of great. Kids love it. Adults love it. If you have all adults, you can make it kind of special and get special gourmet cookies and special chocolates, and make a really special s'more at Easter time when there's peeps. Roasting peeps on the fire is really, really good. So that's another little tip. So one of the things my hubby had always wanted was a shuffleboard table. And because we've played at Port restaurants and they were really fun, and thought it would be fun and a nice thing to have for guests to play here at our house. And it was so cool because we found one at a Habitat for Humanity restore. I don't know if you know what that is. I'm going to link in the show notes what it is, or where to find them near you. But they have new and old construction and home items, so that people donate when they are building houses or tearing down houses, or sometimes a store will be overstocked with something. So we literally found a shuffleboard table for a couple $100. And I looked it up online, and that particular shuffleboard table was well over 1,000. So there's always low cost ways for you to find cool, fun things to do. There's Cornhole. That's another game we have. You can make your own. You can find them, I think, even at Marshalls and TJ Maxx these days, Target, whatever. Probably Walmart, Amazon, delivered to your door tomorrow. That being said, Amazon actually has a lot of great little lawn games that you can get and have just available for people to be playing, especially if you're going to have kind of a lot of different people over. Sometimes it kind of helps if there is an activity like that to do that's a little bit more physical. Another idea I had was a cooking night where everyone brings a different part of the meal and then you all cook it together. I haven't done this, but it totally came to my mind, and I thought when I was putting this episode together in my mind and thinking about it, I thought, oh, that would be really fun. And you could play music that goes along with the theme of that meal, especially if you have friends who like to cook. Maybe if you are not a cook yourself and your friends aren't cooks, you want to just skip that one altogether, and that's totally fine. Also, if it's not a couples thing or a big group thing, even if you just have a girlfriend coming over. In episode 10, I interviewed my sweet friend Jenny Rose, and she is married to my husband's best friend. We were already friends with him when he met her. So when she came into the picture, we really liked her, but I kind of had to build a friendship with her because we already had a friendship with her husband. So she had mentioned that she wanted to learn how to sew, and I knew how to sew. And I was a little nervous about it. I don't know why. Just sharing a skill maybe just feels a little, scary. But I invited her over to sew an apron. I said, "Do you want to come over and we can go to the store and pick out fabric and I can show you the basics and we can both sew an apron?" And she said, "Yeah, that's great. That sounds like fun." And honestly, that day, so long ago, they were just married, not very long when we had that day. We liked each other and we were friends before that, but I feel like that day where she came over and we did that sewing project together really started to deepen our friendship. So doing something like that, doing a craft, really just bond you with somebody, and it can create a nice atmosphere to be able to make people feel welcome in your home and welcome in your life as a friend. You could do a themed movie night and have food that goes along with the movie you're going to watch. You can do blind wine, beer, cheese tasting, or even blind soda tasting. You can get a bunch of different types of sodas and, cover the labels and then have everybody guess what it is, or what one do they like the best. That is also kind of a fun idea. If your sincere desire is for your guests to have a good time, that's going to shine through. So ultimately, these are all just some little ideas, but it's always fun to plan something. So keep that in mind. Let's move on to sustenance. I love Julia Childs. Well, I started loving her when I saw the movie Julie and Julia, and it just made me fall in love with her story and kind of where she came from, and that her heart really was with cooking. And I love this quote from her: "A party without a cake is just a meeting." And I love that. Now, I'm not a huge cake fan, so I know, kind of funny I picked that quote, but I just like the sentiment of it, that, putting something special into an event that you're planning makes other people feel special too. In the Bible, there is countless scriptures that talk about feasts and celebrations. Food was just as important in ancient culture as it is now. It brings people together, it creates memories, and we're commanded to celebrate in the Bible. Jesus visited weddings and had dinners, and there's so many things chock full in scripture that I don't even have enough time to list to you all of the verses that talk about it. Important to see Jesus' example, that he did participate in those activities in the day in, day out, going to people's homes and spending time with them. And that's why hosting is so important and on my heart. And that's why I like to look at all of these elements that are very obviously part of being a good hostess and having hospitality, making sure your guests feel like they've been thought of. And that is the most important thing. That being said, sometimes cooking can be nerve-wracking, and especially if it's for a large group or you're just not used to cooking. So I want to give you some tips that will hopefully help you in the area of serving food to your guests. Tip number 1, use a recipe. Use a recipe. Unless you are a crazy, amazing cook and you have all the confidence in the world, if you're going to tackle something, now is not the time to just throw a dash of this and a dash of that in and see what it tastes like if you add a little extra salt. Now is not the time. That it just leads to stress and possibly your guests feeling like your food maybe isn't so good. if you make a mistake. And so I just would definitely suggest using a recipe. One time we had done a show. So if you have been following me for a while, you know that me and my husband were professional acrobats, and that's how we met. And while we were still working as acrobats, we had done a show that happened to be pretty close to our house. And all of our friends that we worked with on the regular had never been to our house because we often didn't do shows very close to our house. And so we got finished with the show, and my hubby suggested that we invite everyone over. And I said, sounds great. And so he finished tearing down at the theater. I headed home to get things ready for everybody to come. And this is at night. We're like talking. It's like 9:30 at night, at least at this point. So and at the time we did not have a ton of money. So I went to the grocery store, got a few little things, and I was thinking, oh, you know what? I want to do fondue. Well, we had just gotten a fondue pot and for Christmas, and I had never used it before. I had never done it myself at home. And in my mind, I thought, oh, I've got some cheese in the drawer in my fridge. I know I have cheese, so I probably don't need to buy cheese. I think I've got enough. And we'd been to restaurants like Forever Fondue, so I had watched people make cheese fondue. Well, let me just tell you, you need a recipe for the most part for cheese fondue, especially if you've never made it before. Once you've made it, you could maybe kind of wing it a little bit, but it was not a good idea to wing it, guys. I got home, and we lived, and I didn't mention that we kind of lived in the mountains. So a little bit far from the grocery store. So once I was home and preparing, there was no running back to the grocery store. There wasn't enough time. This was it. So I go home, I'm setting out stuff, I'm starting the fondue pot, I'm doing like they do where they put the little oil in and then they start putting in the cheese and then they sprinkle in a little flour and then add a little beer for the liquid, and I'm stirring and I'm just thinking, oh, this will just come right together. Well, I definitely didn't have enough cheese, like for sure. Now I've actually made fondue a lot of times, and I look back at how much cheese I had. That was not enough cheese for fondue. And I had a couple of different kinds, so that was also kind of weird. And so I just kept grabbing like little bits of cheese that I had left in the fridge to try to make it more. Consistency was so weird. It started to burn. It was a mess. And everyone comes over. And of course I was like, sorry about the fondue, guys. And of course, nobody really cared. And one of our friends even just ate it and was like, it's really good actually. But I mean, it was like Play-Doh consistency. And so that is one of my stories behind the recommendation to use a recipe. Make something that you've made before. So something that that you've made that without a recipe that comes out good every time. Even something like cooking burgers on the grill. You don't really need a recipe for that. So those are all really good, easy options that will leave you not feeling stressed. Tip number 2, ask your guests about food allergies and ask them about their likes and dislikes. We had a friend who used to be married to this man who wasn't a horrible person or anything, but every single time they came over, and I'm pretty sure I asked if there was anything neither of them liked or whatever, or were allergic to, but I feel like every time he came over, he wouldn't eat one of the elements that I had cooked. And it always made me feel so anxious. I thought, I'm pretty sure I asked, and then I would just at random pick the thing that he didn't like or was allergic to. So, and I did, my friend said, don't feel bad. He's just really picky. But it's just a good rule of thumb. That's why also now what I do is I let people know, hey, I'm making such and such. I'll text, call, whatever. thinking of making such and such. What do you think? And then that gives them a chance to go, oh, I'm allergic to that. Oh, my kids won't eat that or my hubby won't eat that. It gives you an idea. And if you let someone know this enough ahead of time, you can be prepared and not feel offended that someone didn't eat something you made, because sometimes maybe someone wouldn't even be willing to say that they were allergic or say that they just generally don't like that thing. It might leave you feeling like, oh man, it must be really bad. I think it's okay, but they're not eating it. Why aren't they eating it? So that is another good tip. Tip number 3, make enough food for everyone. So I have a story that's not my own. It comes from a friend who went to an event, and there were minimum 10 adults at this event, plus children. And she said it was a brunch. And she said they had a tiny bowl of eggs, maybe like 5 pieces of bacon, and a little bit of fruit, and that was it. And that was definitely not enough food for everyone. And what happens when you don't have enough food, people feel like they can't take what they are hungry for. And then it kind of creates this little bit of an anxious atmosphere, especially if your guests are really hungry. And you don't want your guests getting angry at you because you didn't provide enough food. And keep in mind that your appetite, what you think is a lot of food, might not be a lot of food to somebody else. And you can't even tell necessarily by size of the person. I mean, I've seen people of all different shapes and sizes eat small amounts or eat bigger amounts. And so, I mean, this is kind of a hard one, but just if you have a small appetite, I would just cook a little more than what you would normally eat in a portion, and think of that times however many people are there. Having leftovers is never a bad thing. You can always send them home with people, put them in lunches the next day. I would always rather have leftovers than have not enough food or be scrambling because I didn't put out enough. Another example, my brothers can eat a lot of food. I always think about the Gaston song where he sings, now that I'm grown, I eat 5 dozen eggs, so I'm roughly the size of a barge. Yeah, that's what Gaston sings. And I think about that with my brothers because they eat a lot. And me and my hubby have come down on our portion considerably just because we're a little bit older. So just keep in mind different age groups you have coming over. I mean, honestly, if you have a man coming over to your house that is between the ages of 16 and 30, chances are he probably eats a fair amount of food. Just a little word of warning. Okay, tip number 4 is appetizers, drinks, and desserts. Setting out appetizers will help you not feel stressed if your meal is not done in time, or if some of your guests arrive, but not all of your guests arrive. It gives them a little something to have until the food is ready or until everyone has arrived. So you don't have to do anything that is major. You can buy frozen taquitos, heat them up in your stove and cut them up into little bite sizes and put little toothpicks in them. Set them on a little plate, and now you look like you have this nice little appetizer, and put out a little bowl of salsa next to it. I mean, there's so many things that can be really easy, and if you just present them in a nice way, even if it's something from the grocery store, chips in a bowl and salsa. I mean, really, and most grocery stores these days have prepared cheese plates and veggie plates and fruit plates. And so you can and if you take those things and put them on not the tray that they come in, but on something else, it's just a nice presentation. And realistically, if you don't have a lot of time, or it's a really big party, you can just leave it in the thing that they bring it in. But it's really not hard to set it out or to kind of change the appearance of something that is seemingly simple and make it feel elevated. I generally like to have about 3 appetizer options, especially if I'm having multiple people over. Then they can kind of have their choice, because sometimes, just like your dinner, you never know if somebody is going to like everything that you set out. If you just have the one thing, you just have chips and salsa out, someone comes over and says, "Oh, I'm allergic to corn," and you have corn tortilla chips, that now you feel stressed because you thought, I have out, and then you're like looking through your closet to find, have something that I can put out for them. So having 3 is kind of a nice number of things, and it doesn't have to be a lot. Appetizers don't have to be a lot. I mean, you have a meal planned, but it's just a little something that makes people feel comfortable and ensures that you don't get any hangry hosts or guests. You consume alcoholic beverages and you are serving them. First thing, don't be offended if people don't drink. If they come to your house and you didn't realize they didn't drink, don't be offended, and don't ever push people to drink. It is honestly, me and my hubby, we enjoy having drinks in a responsible way, but pushing people or making people feel bad, or if they have one glass of wine, saying things like, "Oh, come on, have another." I mean, none of us want to feel like we're in high school and being peer pressured into something, especially if we are really trying to portray God's heart. We just want to make sure that everyone feels comfortable. Another great option with serving alcohol is doing like a pre-mixed cocktail. You can mix ahead of time in a pitcher, and that is easy. Or even just an ice chest with beers or Trulies, couple of bottles of wine open so that your guests can easily see them and even pour it themselves. That's another great way for people to see what's out and about. And make sure you have both options. If you have coffee, you might want to have decaf and regular. If you have beverages for kids, make sure that they can be consumed by them. If the parents are weird about sugar, you could always make a fun fizzy drink with, fizzy water with fresh fruit in it or something. Just make sure you check with your guests on their comfort level of what they like to drink and what they like to have their kids drink. Moving on to dessert. Dessert is a great option to ask someone to bring. Often people will say, "Can I bring anything?" And if someone offers, I mean, we've all been on the other end of it where we have offered, and you really don't mind. If someone's having you in their home, you really don't mind bringing something. So having someone bring a dessert is a great thing, because I find that some people like very decadent desserts and some people like very healthy desserts. So this is a great way to not have to be finding out a million different things about the likes and dislikes of your guests. If they offer to bring something, then saying, "Hey, bring a dessert," then you don't have to think about whether or not they're going to like that dessert. They're going to bring something that they like. Of course, you want to let them know if you're allergic to anything. Tip number 5, being present with your guests is more important than cooking a fancy meal. Whatever it is that you're cooking, don't let that become the main focus. Don't let something be so hard to serve that you can't sit down and be present, or that you can't be preparing something and be chatting with your guests, or even allowing them to help you so that you are already hosting, entertaining, doing all of it all at once. Some things can really consume when you are preparing things. And so it's just better to keep in mind, like I said in the first in the series of hospitality, that your intention, what is your intention behind your guest coming over? It shouldn't be to look perfect or to have whatever Pinterest-worthy spread, but it should be that you want them to feel loved and welcome. So this is just a good thing to keep in mind. You might want to keep in mind if your prep and presentation has you more preoccupied than present, you might want to rethink it. Tip number 6 is Grandma's secret recipe. Grandma Redding was a great grandma to me growing up. Family friends who adopted us. This is my Cracker's mother. If you're wondering who Crackers is, you can go back and listen to her episode. I'll link it in the show notes. I talked to her about widowhood because we did lose my Happy, her husband, 4 years ago, and she gives us some encouragement there, but I will link that in the show notes. But her mama was amazing, and she always talked about how, if it's easier and it's better to make your guests feel welcome than for you to be harried and running around, you can always take a can of something and add a little zhuzh to it and put it in a nice dish and no one's going to know. And I've now I like to cook, but there are elements that you can get from the store, boxed and whatever, that can make things a little bit easier. So I have had people rave about recipes, and if it is somewhat canned or boxed and I don't really want to share that information, I always say, oh, Grandma's secret recipe. So you can take that one if you like. But even as simple as you're making soup and you want to have bread and you think, oh, I'm going to make fresh bread and soup. Well, it might be too much to do both of those things. So going to the grocery store and buying a loaf of French bread is totally fine and can help you to speed up the process, or buying canned beans for your chili versus having to soak regular beans overnight and doing all of that. So just be smart with your timeline and remember to keep your guests in mind. And something else to keep in mind, just like you don't want to do a recipe that you've never done before or cook something you've never cooked before, really, when you have guests coming over, don't wing the grocery store thing with something you've never tried. So, if you are doing chili, don't grab a can of chili that you've literally never tried what it tastes like, or don't grab a box of cookies and go, oh, well, I don't know how these are going to taste, but, we'll just grab these and throw them on a plate. It's a good idea if you've actually tried what you're buying, if you're going to buy from the store and serve it, just kind of so you have an idea of what it tastes like and that it is going to be good, because there are some boxed and whatever things that really are no good. So just make sure that whatever it is that you're serving that is a convenience food is indeed edible. Right. Last tip number 7 is feeding kids. So like I mentioned before, we've lots of nieces and nephews, got kids. Kids have been around us our entire marriage. And my girlfriend, Nicole, has such a beautiful way of just hosting children and making sure there's always something for them to do and something for them to eat. She makes her children guests feel just as welcome as her adult guests. And I always love that about her. Well, if you're listening, you know who you are. That's always been so sweet for me to see. So when it comes to food and kids, make sure that you don't have anything that they're allergic to in the house, especially to these days where kids are allergic to peanuts, and peanut allergies can be quite severe. I mean, even as bad as you baked cookies with nuts in them on a cookie sheet and then baked another kind of cookie but didn't properly wash the cookie sheet, that's enough to send a kid who has a bad peanut allergy to the hospital. And that's the last thing you want to do. So just really make sure that everything is at least, first of all, safe. And then you can kind of check with the parents to see what they say about their kids, what they like, what they don't like. And if you can provide something for them that makes them feel special and that the parents approve of, then that is such a sweet way to show God's heart for hospitality to even your littlest guest. Another thing that I did with my nieces and nephews is I bought these cute little cups from the dollar store that had lids and little straw in them, because our house, we don't have kids. So our house in general isn't set up for children being in it on the constant. So I want them to feel loved and special. So when they came over, I have these cups that I can fill with whatever fun drink I'm going to serve them, but then they feel special because they have a special cup in my house. Even if, like I said, I got them at the dollar store. You can send them home with the cup if you don't want to store it. But if you don't have children and you are serving children, just keep in mind, and these are things that can also help, kids not spill in your home. And, and don't be mad if a kid spills. That's something to keep in mind. But also, if they spill, you don't want them to feel bad about it. You don't want them to feel sad or uncomfortable, or the parent to feel uncomfortable. So just keep in mind that if you have little ones coming, you might want to provide a way for them to have food and beverage that they can consume without feeling like they're walking on eggshells, or that their parents are walking on eggshells. And, just think things like fruit snacks, juice boxes, whatever it may be, fruit, veggies, little finger sandwiches, whatever it is, you can create a little something different for the kids. And also, don't be offended if the parent goes, you know what, I'm just going to bring something for them because I know what they like. If that is the case, don't be offended by that, because parents coming, you want them to feel welcome. So, and the kids as well. So if their kids are taken care of, they're likely going to be able to relax and enjoy themselves more. And so if for them that means bringing a little something that they know their kids like, then by all means let them, and don't feel bad about it. All right, guys, to sum it all up, it's all in the intent of your heart when you host people in your home. Jesus multiplied 5 loaves and fishes and fed thousands and made people feel loved and welcome. And you know what? If you invite him into your home and invite him into your process of hosting, he can do the same for you. So whether you can cook a gourmet meal or organize a potluck, or you grab some yumminess that is pre-made from the store and pour it into the bowl you got from your wedding, all that matters is that when you're serving, a little bit of you comes out, and through that, people will see a little glimpse of Jesus. And don't we all need that in this world right now? It is so uncertain, and there's so many things that we don't know, but we can create safe, sweet spaces for people to come in and just take a break from the weary world. And that should be our number one goal when we are hosting. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'm going to be doing one episode right before Christmas with my mom. We are going to be further talking about hosting. We're going to be talking about my grandma, who is an incredible host, and I am looking forward to sharing that. My grandma was a very special woman. So that will be the second to the last episode of the season. Join me for that. Thanks, everybody. Okay, all you housewives, that's it for today. I'm truly grateful you joined us. If you know anyone who would be encouraged by this episode, you can easily share it by taking a screenshot and adding it to your stories or feed. You can also text it to a friend. New episodes are uploaded every other Friday. Be sure to subscribe so you can catch them all. You can find and interact with me on Facebook and Instagram at Married Rogers Neighborhood, as well as my website, which I linked in the show notes. If you enjoyed our conversation today, it helps so much if you could take a second to rate and give a 5-star review. It really makes a huge difference for me and the podcast. Just remember, we are in this together. God loves you, and you are not alone. See you next time.